have a new commander-in-chief every 4 years, or when you debate who that person is, or when you politicize whoever that person is, what that means is you can never have a budgetary cycle that lasts longer than 4 years because the next president changes the budgetary priorities. Well, guess what happens when you have like Russia or China, where you have the same president in place for 8 terms? Now, all of a sudden, you have funding that's secure for a 10-year mission, a 12-year mission, a 20-year mission. In the United States, like 5 years is the longest budgetary cycle that we have. Most budgets only last 1 fiscal year. That means the money that we give you as a Border Patrol officer this year, you have to spend it this year. Do you remember? I'm sure you remember the ridiculous ways that we would spend money at the end of the fiscal year.
Yes. They're like, hey guys, we have $30K. We got to spend it. We'll never get it again.
Yes, exactly right. That's the way that we think in the United States. So we can't create deep cover operations like the Chinese can. We can't. Could you imagine? What office would identify a 19-year-old kid to go to spend 5 years studying law in China and then spend another 4 years building their own legal practice in China and then become activated as an intelligence asset?
Yeah.
Who would pay the bill for that?
Yeah, it'd be scary. It'd be scary because they might, hey, we liked that before, but we're not paying for that no more. So just leave them hanging. Like, oh my God.
Correct. But that's not how our adversaries work. So our adversaries have that long game because they're authoritarian in nature. So here in the United States, if we're going to secure a way to compete at the new game board, we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to find a way to fund operations for longer than 5 years at a time? And then second to that, if we are willing to fund or fund operations for longer than 5 years at a time, how do we vet the people that we will put into those positions? Because you're essentially putting a great deal of trust in an independent resource that's going to have very little supervision. And CIA used to be an organization with very little oversight. And then 9/11 happened because CIA became so entrenched in feeding its own pockets that it lost sight of the larger mission. FBI was guilty of the same thing. That's why 9/11 was the biggest intelligence failure in history. And from that failure, they created the Director of National Intelligence. They created the TSA just to keep these two organizations in check. So it's a checkered history, dude. And you're right, like, oh, the government fucked up. But what the government needs to do now is evolve.
Yeah.
And that evolution is not going to feel good, just like puberty doesn't really feel good, right?
So long ago, I try and forget about it. I still can't.
So fresh on. Freedom.